And Cassidy just picked up a set of gear there. If I can dive into that.
Yeah, as Michael mentioned, we aren't. This isn't the beginning of the game, so we did drop a couple of pieces of armor to get you started. And then I'm gonna ring my bell because my health dropped from putting on new armor. Our bell works similarly to the Dark Souls bonfire. When you ring it, your healing bells come back. Enemies respawn, you get healed. Yeah, it's pretty much exactly the same as the bonfire.
And so it also acts as a save state then for whatever gear system?
Yeah. Okay. Exactly. It's like a checkpoint. So if I die, I'll end up back there.
We do want to also kind of encourage RPG elements within our RPG part of our game. So you will be able to interact with many different NPCs and characters within our game. And here we have Danthea. Danthea is a Lisa's manhunter, which is one of the major religions of our game. And she's here in her well to find a specific character. And she's basically asking us, like, hey, there's a defender of her well that's stopping me from progressing, but since you're a different faction, you're a remnant knight, she probably won't attack you. So if you can find this guy for me, that would be great.
And so that remnant knight faction, is that something that you join earlier in the game, or is that your like a starting class?
That is actually kind of like a lore-based explanation of why your character can, do certain abilities, fight in certain styles, and have certain spell gems. So it's more lore-based versus class-based or anything like that.
So here we're gonna actually make a weapon because we didn't have one from the beginning. So all these parts that you see here, there's a bunch of different options, and you can't. When you have the full game, you won't be able to just have it all. You'll have to find everything in the world. So you make sure you explore and find everything that so you can have the full experience. But we're first gonna pick the weapon handle, and this changes your fighting style or your animation set. For example, we have the glaive. It's like the dark ball sword thing. We have dual wield, two-handed stabbing weapon, which is like a spear. One-handed stabbing is like a dagger or like a fencing sword. Two-handed slashing is like a hammer or a great sword. What handle do you think you'd like to see us playing today?
So I already tried out the dual handles, and had some fun with it. So let's try something a little bit different. So let's do a bigger, heavier weapon like a hammer or a maul or an axe.
Okay. Awesome. So yeah. All right. So you know about all this. This one changes the weapon part that you actually hit with. So Michael wants me to do a mace. So So the pommel's like it adds a special perk. Some examples of that would be on a chance on hit, you might poison an enemy. You have the correct pommel for that.
Okay.
Another one would be when you kill an enemy, your speed increases for 10 seconds.
And so are these options available from the beginning, and they're just kind of unavailable by forging costs, or are these things that you unlock as you progress through the game?
That is a great question. So it's actually most of these, you actually have to go out in the world and explore the different nooks and crannies. And pommels and weapon heads might drop off of bosses or be found in certain spots and levels. So it's more like you'll have kind of a really base set, and you're unlocking more and more customization as you go through the game.
Okay, let's do that ally summoning pommel.
Okay. Oh, cool. Yeah. Spawn ally.
Yeah, let's do that one.
All right. This last one is basically this one. These are called codexes, and this will change the way your hammer looks. Like some of them might look, like a normal war hammer, and then there's different themes. Like there's an insect one, so it's called a shari. It'll look more like insect carapaces. Or what are they called? Chitin. Yeah. Chit. I don't know how to say it.
No, you got it right.
Anyway. Which one do you want me to do, Michael?
I think it's Time Worn, right?
Time Worn. Oh, okay, that's right. Yeah, that's the one.
Sure. Okay.
Do the hammer.
This is my personal favorite.
The look, at least, right?
Yeah, for the look.
And then we're gonna upgrade it to make it a little bit stronger.
And so there's two different currencies that you were forging with. One was a diamond, and one was a kind of maybe an ingot-looking one. What is the difference between those, and how do you go about acquiring them?
So the ones that look like diamonds are kind of gemmy. Those are called glint, and that's like the main currency of the game. And in the final version, it's not working in the demo for frustration purposes. It'll drop when you die. If you die again, it'll permanently be lost.
Okay.
And that's one of the main resources for upgrading, buying items, and all that stuff. The other thing that you're seeing, the ingot looking material, that is the ore within the game. And the ore is a resource that's much more limited, so you're going to find those in the level. Maybe certain enemies might drop them, but it's kind of your major limiting factor for upgrading and crafting.
Gotcha. Wow, that was very impressive how quickly you dispatched them. Definitely a lot more damage being dealt with that than my dual wielding swords that I was messing around with earlier.
In the crafting system, because there's so much customization, we're pretty open to the idea of like you could make really, really powerful combinations of weapons, and you could also make really, really bad ones too.
So what did we see right there? It was a dash with a kind of a fire trail left behind you, and it looked like that depleted the red bar above the middle symbol.
Yeah, that's a fire spell blade. It was an item that I picked up behind Danthea, and I equipped it while you guys were talking. But basically, we have 3 of them right now. I put it into this weapon here. When you activate it, you can do 3 things. You can hit an enemy, you can dodge, and you can block. And hitting an enemy will catch them on fire and do like a fire dot. Dodging does this firewall, and if they're in it, they take damage.
Nice.
And then if you block, while you're holding block, your stamina is going to drain, but the enemies, when they hit, it's going to cause your weapon to explode. So you do AoE damage.
Okay. Yeah, I did not have much luck blocking earlier, and so it was on my list of things to ask about. I felt like the block was not blocking nearly as well as I hoped it would.
Yeah, you still take damage, and it also has a parry built into it. So if you can block right at the right moment, you can parry them and it'll stun the enemy. And while they're stunned, you'll be able to do critical hit damage.
Yeah, something that I thought was kind of an interesting flourish is when you go into your blocking animation, there is a long wind up to the block. It is in an instantaneous shield up, hammer up, etc. Just like it's almost like an attack, but you're pulling your block out. It's a bit different than a lot of action games.
Yeah, it is. It's very difficult timing. It's actually something we're in the process of just kind of fine-tuning right now. Some of them are a lot easier. Like if you use dagger heads, they have an increased block window and they're much faster.
Okay.
And so there's even perks to like upgrade parry to make it even more easy. And sorry, just to interview too. This is Alara. She's the defender I was mentioning earlier, the Guardian of Farewell. And she's giving us a quick warning of like, hey, you can traverse the gardens for a while, but don't touch anything. These are sacred grounds. And if you do, there's going to be punishment for it.
And so she's the one who Danthea was not able to.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Exactly. And obviously, since we're players, we're going to touch stuff, and she's probably not going to like that. So we'll see. We see her later on.
And so I guess if you do a bloodless run through this, like I assume that you can just, kind of speed run through and dash. Will that mean that you won't have an encounter with her later on? I guess is that level of player choice available, or is it no matter what you're going to be defiling the ground?
So I will say, more specifically for her, unfortunately, like you will have to fight her. She kind of plays further role in the story, and you do get to explore. So you don't just straight up kill her, but you will have to fight her, unfortunately. But that, like what you said, like completely avoiding people and kind of changing outcomes is something we have plans for. Like you really want to like player option to like. So down there's another character over at that gate. He's the one that locked us out.
Yeah.
You can choose to kind of get your vengeance for him setting up an ambush for you. Or you can save him and bring him back to town, and maybe that'll open up another quest or different rewards. And even the process of like seeing over and completely not interacting with him, well, maybe all these enemies that he's trying to use you as bait for, maybe they'll get him instead. And so we do want to have like all manners of like different choices, and hopefully people will play through and see how these different outcomes affect things in different ways.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of From Software's games. I've played all of them. So that's a very Demon Souls kind of vibe to it that I appreciate.
Yeah, we love that stuff. It's definitely a bit harder for our team size, but like our writer Henry he absolutely loves that kind of thing too, and so he's trying to include it in every way he can.
And so how big is your team?
Well, for the majority of our game development, I'd say like the first 4 years, it's been about 6 of us.
Okay.
And I think, Eric, if you want to correct me, we're at 13 or 12?
12. Yeah, about 12.
And Nice. And how has the pandemic affected the development cycle?
Fortunately for us, before the pandemic hit back in 2018, we relocated and started working remotely, exclusively remotely. So when the pandemic happened, it didn't really change much for us as a team. Maybe perhaps for individually, being stuck at home, not having a ability to kind of like refresh your minds, kind of bog down the creativity a little bit. But
Yeah.
it didn't. I don't think it affected us as much as a traditional studio that works inside, inside an office space.
Nice.
Yeah, we really lucked out. We were working in our sweatpants for a little bit before that.
So we had a little bit of practice, and all the different kinks that kind of comes out with working remotely, we kind of like slowly iron those out to be in a process where I think fits for our studio and our team.
So we just accepted a quest for Craig's Cognac, which I'm looking forward to Webster's whiskey later on. So tell me a bit about the quest system and how, do you have a quest log? Is it something that's a little more inscrutable like a Dark Souls, or is it more like a traditional, oh, there we go, more of a traditional
Yeah,
RPG?
so there is a bit more. So there is a mix. Like, not all the information will be completely open to the player. Like, some things will be a bit more secretive. But we do have a lot more quests, and we do want you to have a general idea on where to go and how to do certain things to a degree. And so we do have this quest log for that.
And so it said a recipe. Does that imply that there's a crafting system for items outside of weapons?
The Craig's Cognac, so there's the recipes for brews is what we call them. Brews are a consumable resource that give you a really powerful bonus and a really bad negative as well. So it's kind of like this risk-reward system with that.
I think I have some actually.
Yeah, so the ones he found in the level, like, he'll be able to use them, but once he dies, he loses them.
I was close with the Webster's whiskey.
Yeah, sorry, it's the will goes. But yeah, it's what that does is it increases your damage by 25%, but you lose 25% of your max health.
Gotcha.
But like, let's say, wow, we really like this, we want more. We found the recipe for it, so if we go back to town, we can go to the tavern and get more crafted. We can purchase basically an infinite amount.
Okay. And so is there a single town that's a hub world that you are branching out from, or are there multiple towns that you are traversing through the environment with?
There's only one like kind of major civilization left, and by major I mean it's not much. It's like kind of a sad settlement, but that's called Starspire, and it's actually where you start out in the game.
Okay.
So from Starspire, you'll do kind of a small quest chain, and you'll unlock the Greenway, which is that what you saw in the trailer, that sand ship that lets you travel across this ruin of sand. And as soon as you leave the Starspire, wherever you see, as long as you're not blocked by any kind of objects, and you find a dock to land at, you can go to. So like, as soon as you launch, there'll be pretty much like 8 islands that you can choose to go to. And some of them might be pretty hard, but if you're skilled enough, you can totally land and start clearing it out.
So, and you can go to any of those in any order, just your mileage may vary with how far you get.
Exactly. So, for example, Herwell here is one of the 4 kind of major starter islands that you can choose from. And to give you kind of an example, we're considering Herwell a medium-sized island. Okay.
I like all the verticality is really impressive. You kind of see how the level loops back on itself stacking over on top of each other. Because now we're on top of that gate that we saw, that we were trapped outside of early. And the isometric perspective, you use it very well to kind of hide the fact that you will be going above where you are now. And then it's almost like it's a reveal later on that you're in the same location.
Yeah, and we actually want to use it the opposite way too, for other islands. So like an island that'll start at the top, and work your way down, seeing everything below. Yeah, it's I don't know why. I think a lot of people, and especially myself, is why we aimed for it. Like, verticality it feels better. It feels better than that like kind of flatter top-down feel. It's one of the things like we hope helps stand out for our game. Like, a lot of people might be coming in here thinking it's like a hack and slash Diablo game, when it's a lot closer to just a top-down Diablo style where you're being careful with encounters, where you're thinking of your route through a level and all that.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that. So the loot system, is it you have a singular piece of armor that you're then upgrading? I see you have a pretty nifty hat there now.
Yeah.
So it looks like I guess, is it a traditional kind of loot game where you can run through islands multiple times to get better drops of loot, or is it you are unlocking specific bits as you go? So this is the one hat that you have. This is the Lucatiel hat from Dark Souls 2.
Yeah.
That is exactly it. I'm glad you asked that question. So that's exactly the case. So with the weapon crafting, the other thing we have on top of that is the armor system. And like you're asking, it is that one piece of armor is from one place always in the game, and you can only find it in that location. And maybe it's a drop on the ground, or it's from a specific elite mob or a boss, but it will always just be there. And these armor pieces have set effects, and they're static. So right now he has two piece. The first armor set we gave you is there's a chance that when you take a hit, that'll do no damage to you.
Oh, neat.
Whereas the Cavalier set, that nifty hat there, if you have 2 to 4 pieces of that, every time you pick up currency, you'll do a certain amount of damage for a certain amount of time. So that one's like really good for clearing a level, but maybe not so good for bosses.
Okay, and so I'm looking over on the left-hand side, and there's the hats, the kind of the body armor, legs, gloves, and then the weapon slot. But it looks like there's at least, there's 4 other positions that have nothing in them. One is, I assume, is for dual hit, for like an offhand. Is there something else that goes in the top left, top right, and bottom right positions? If that's a square.
Right now it actually is, but there is going to be think of it something like a trinket system, which is if you played Hollow Knight, it's not too different from the the notches, the I forgot what they're called.
Okay.
The pins, something like that, and it's just another modifier that you can kind of lay over the entire system. We don't have that in the game right now, but we do plan for it.
Gotcha.
So lastly, you were mentioning the items that you get from killing enemies. That's what these would be. These are runes, and this can further point your character in the direction that fits your playstyle. So, for example, if I feel like my hammer right now is too heavy, I can pick this haste rune, and the haste rune will actually increase my attack speed. Nice. And so I'll just put them in my armor and further increase my attack speed. But right now, my armor only has 1 slot.
That's what.
But as I rank up my armor, it'll start unlocking more sockets, so I can find even more haste runes and just keep adding more haste runes to make myself as fast as possible.
And so how do you balance out people who want to experiment with different armor sets, but I've already, spent 5,000 gems and 10 ingots upgrading this one armor set? Even if is there a transmog style system, or do you have to start back at level 1 for every new piece of armor you get?
So it is a little punishing in that way that you would have to start over from level 1. But let's say if you do spend 10,000 is quite a bit, so you'll be a bit in the world, and we're dropping enough resources, enough items that you'd be able to pretty quickly not have just the one set. You can have multiple sets, and also very quickly have a completely new set if you choose to do so. Maybe it won't be as strong as the one you've been rolling with, but you'll be able to at least get it 2 competitive levels fairly quickly.
Okay.
We are coming up close to the end of our interview, but I did want to show one last thing about the character customization. We have a blessing system, which is basically like a talent tree. And this first row is like the basic things like increase damage, increase armor, and proc chances. If I want to increase the amount of times my spawn ally will work, this is the one I'm going to want to pick. Further down the line, you can increase your damage in 2 specific weapons. So say we really love the weapon that we're using, I would put more points to that to increase the damage. And
Are these blessings just something that Danathea can give you, or are they faction specific, or?
They're kind of something that you go to the monk Elysis within the main hub. Okay. It's just for the demo that we have everything, including the forge and all that stuff here in this specific level. Normally, you'd want to go back to the hub level and upgrade your character there, and that's where that'll always be.
Got it. The open world aspect where you're sailing in between levels on the ship across the deserts. Are there things that can happen? Are there encounters that happen in that open world area, or is it just flavor to move you from one spot to the next?
Currently, it's in the design that it's a bit of flavor, and kind of think of it as a deep breath for the player, where there's not anything challenging your way, where you can kind of just take a moment to collect yourself as you go from island to island and slowly explore. We do have a lot of design plans on storms or like things that can like muddle your journey or kind of disorient you, or maybe like sand pits or things to kind of explore the ocean, like treasure maps and finding treasure within the sand. But in its current iteration, we don't have anything more than kind of just slowly perusing and exploring and taking it all in.
Yeah, kind of a Wind Waker.
Exactly, yeah.
So is this the gentleman that you have the quests to go after?
No, he's actually somewhere else in the level. And if you do take a time to try it for yourself, we hope you kind of check it out and try to finish that quest. This is Lady Alara, the one that we saw earlier giving us the warning not to touch stuff.
Gotcha.
Which we did. Cassidy is making very quick work of her.
Yeah, I was about to say, that hammer is devastating.
Yeah, the hammer's really good. I died so many times today, so.
Yeah, I promise you, he made that look way too easy.
I was about to say, I'm glad that we picked a good weapon for you to take her out with.
And I will say that there's something about the weapons too that encourages you to kind of play with different builds too. That from my experience, just kind of playing through different bosses, is that certain weapon combinations work really well for that particular fight. Like for her, there's moments where you can kind of catch her where she's like in the middle of her animations or in the middle of her attack that you can really devastate her with a big hit. But then there's also ones that are like much faster and they recover quicker. So you may want to do something like quicker, like a dual wielding daggers to kind of like fight those type of encounters as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I guess my last question is just if people want to know what, yeah, this is where I went to start off the demo when I first got it with no weapon. I was just like, this is just terrible. For people who have not heard of the game before and like me see the trailer and are kind of struck by the art style, what do you want them to know about this game, if nothing else?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. Eric, do you have a good answer to that one?
I would want them to know that it's not just another Souls clone. That we're really trying to play within that genre, but we're trying to stay outside of it at the same time.
Yes, I think on top of that, mine would be like, you're not gonna experience something like you might come into thinking it's an action hack and slash game, and it might frustrate players a bit. But if they learn the mechanics and they understand the systems, I think they're gonna have a really fun time playing and finding that this is a different experience from anything they've tried before.
Awesome. Well, this has been great. Thank you guys so much for your time, and I'll let you move on to your next appointment. But I've really enjoyed this, and like I said, I tried the demo out earlier, and I'll definitely be messing around with it a little bit more now that I know not to turn right immediately.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, feel free to contact us out if you have any other questions related to the game or CEO or even game history.
Absolutely. How far along are we, and how close are we to release?
So we are planning for early access. We plan for early access to be somewhere in Q4 of this year or Q1 of next year.
Okay, and PC only?
For now, yes. But we would be happy if we ever have the opportunity for other ports as well.
Yeah, I'm looking at this and licking my chops about it being on the Switch. So.
Yeah, me too. I was saying that.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time, and enjoy the rest of your 3, you guys.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. You too. Have fun.
Take care.